Now, ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome on stage our guest of honor, Yang Berhormat Tan Sri Nur Muhammad Yaakob, to say a few words.
Yang berbahagia Tan Sri Datuk Sri Siti Norma Yaakob, Chairman RAM Holdings Berhad. Yang berbahagia Tan Sri Datuk Sri Rajendra, Executive Deputy Chairman, Group CEO RAM Holdings Berhad. Yang berbahagia Tan Sri Datuk Sri Teh Alik, Managing Director Public Bank. Yang berbahagia Major General Dato' Haji Yahya bin Haji Bidin, Director BPAM. Yang berbahagia Dato' Abdullah Makno, Chairman RHB Bank. Yang berbahagia Mr. Goh Chin Yin, Executive Director Security Commission. Yang berbahagia Dato' Zainal Aznam Yusof, Director RAM. Yang berbahagia Dato' Sri Abdul Hamidi Abdul Hafiz, Chairman Dana Jamin. Miss Priyanti Lianage from RAM Lanka. Tan Sri, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala barakatuh, and a very good evening. Let me first of all thank the management of RAM for inviting me to address this very auspicious event, which marks the apex of RAM's 20th anniversary celebrations. It is indeed a pleasure to be here tonight to pay tribute to award recipients who have shown strong stewardship and represent the best in the debt capital market as principal advisors and lead managers. As one of the early advocates of the Malaysian corporate bond market, I am honored to have pioneered the formation of RAM as the country's first credit rating agency in 1990. I remember vividly, as if it happened yesterday, the late Tan Sri Jaafar Hussain, Governor Bank Malaysia, asking me one afternoon in 1989 to set up rating agency for the bond market as a major step in the creation of a robust financial system in the country. I remember too, working with one of my staff, Mr. Chan Yan Kit, preparing the papers and getting the various approvals. When everything was done, I presented it to the governor and he approved the proposal immediately. He asked me who should head the rating agency. I gave him two names and he chose one of the names, Tan Sri C. Rajendra. The rest, as they say, is history. I'm sure you may want to know who was that other person whom I had shortlisted. Well, the answer to that question will be in my memoir. When it is published, make sure you buy a copy of that memoir. Incidentally, RAM is not the short form for Rajendram. And the letter C in Rajendram's name stands for Chelapa, not credit. RAM, as we know, is a short form for Rating Agency Malaysia. The period of the late 1980s and the early 1990s was a period which saw the creation not only of RAM, but many other institutions, many other products as well. I was involved in the creation of Chagamas as the first mortgage financing institution in the country. It did very well from its first year, and Chagamas, as you know, is a short form for Syarikat Cagaran Malaysia. The only thorny problem, the only thorny issue, arose a few years after Chagamas was set up. when someone decided to set up Ayamas. We had a hard time explaining to the anxious public that Chagamas was not a subsidiary of Ayamas. I was asked too at about that time to set up an interest rate index for the money market. We initially intended to name it MYBOR as a short form for Malaysia Interbank Offer Rate, MYBOR. However, my Hokkien-speaking friends were not happy, since "bor" in Hokkien means wife, and we cannot have wives traded in the interbank money market. Worse, if the wives were traded at a discount. That's when we decided to call it CLIBO, and it is CLIBO today, Kuala Lumpur Interbank Offer Rate. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, RAM has played a pivotal role in the financial market by lending credibility, by lending independence to our assessment of investors, to our assessment of market players. As a pioneering force in the introduction of credit rating services, RAM certainly deserves the accolades it has rightly earned over the past 2 decades. Let me take this opportunity to extend my appreciation, my congratulations to the Chairman and Board of Directors, the Executive Deputy Chairman and CEO Tan Sri Dato' C. Rajendram, as well as the management and the staff of RAM for having steered the organization since its inception in 1990 to where it is today. In the last 2 decades, the domestic bond market has grown from strength to strength, particularly in meeting the funding needs of the private sector. 20 years ago, the Malaysian corporate bond market was only valued at about 6 billion ringgit. Today, it is not uncommon to have such an amount of debt securities issued in just 1 month. In fact, despite the recent global economic and financial recession, gross issuance of corporate bonds averaged 4.9 billion ringgit a month last year, compared to an average of 4.1 billion ringgit in 2008. The strong domestic issuance last year had increased the size of the Malaysian sukuk and corporate debt markets to 669 billion ringgit in aggregate at the end of 2009, compared to 585 billion ringgit in 2008. We, Malaysia, we are now the 3rd largest bond market in Asia, equivalent to 99% of the country's GDP in 2009, compared to 79% of GDP in 2008, and a mere 5% of GDP in 1990. As we move towards shifting the Malaysian economy onto a high growth path and high income nation, we must leverage. We must leverage on a more vigorous private sector expansion to provide the lead in unlocking the nation's growth potentials. We need the private sector to develop new sources of growth in manufacturing, in services, and in the financial industry. We also need the private sector to contribute towards productivity improvements, as well as generate higher value-added potential. Greater dynamism of private sector initiatives in driving growth, in driving structural transformation of the economy, would necessarily require a more robust corporate bond market in meeting the financial requirements of the private sector over the next decade. While we take pride in the tremendous success and achievements of the Malaysian bond market, we must continue to enhance efficiency. We must continue to promote greater competitiveness. In this context, more needs to be done, particularly in deepening further the domestic bond market, widening the risk-return spectrum, as well as developing an inclusive bond market for small and medium enterprises. I am indeed very pleased to note the continuous innovations in the debt capital market, which have progressed from bonds issued with bank guarantees and warrants to issuance of straight bonds and advancing further to more complex sukuk and asset-backed securities. Islamic finance is clearly an important area of focus. Malaysia already has a global positioning with a well-regulated, well-positioned and innovative market. Our Islamic capital market has been growing at exponential rates with the full complement of products, infrastructure, institutions, intermediaries and investors. Today, we are one of the few international financial centers that offer a comprehensive range of Islamic products. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, my team in the Economic Planning Unit is right now in the last phase of preparing the 10 Malaysia Plan, which will be tabled in Parliament on June 10, 2010, one day before the World Cup. The 10th Malaysia Plan will cover the period 2011 to 2015. By some strange coincidence, the year 2011 happens also to be the 500 years anniversary of the fall of Malacca to Portuguese in 1511. Prior to the fall, for much of the 15th century, Malacca was a successful and prosperous country and a major international trading port in the region. I believe there are many important lessons that we can learn from the success of the Malacca Sultanate during the 15th century. Tonight, I want to highlight 3 critical success factors that contributed to the glory of the Malacca Sultanate and which I believe are very important for us today. The first success factor was Malacca's ability to leverage on its geography. Malacca was blessed in terms of the geography and made the most of it. Trade relied on sailing ships, and Malacca was strategically located halfway along the shipping routes between India and China, with easy access to Spice Islands of Indonesia. Further, the Straits of Malacca was shielded from the monsoons, and thus Malacca was well placed for resupplying ships and for waiting out the monsoons. The monsoon seasons dictated the sea traffic. Goods coming in from the east or the west had to be stored awaiting the arrival of other traders. Between December and March, ships would arrive from the western lands and from the far east, whereas ships from Java and the eastern Indonesian archipelago came in from May until September. Malacca responded to this geographical endowment by 1. Building up port and warehousing infrastructure, 2. Ensuring security of goods and merchants from pirates, and 3. Establishing facilities for the different communities of traders to settle and trade in Malacca. That was the first success factor. The second success factor was Malacca's ability to integrate with the region. Malacca was not self-sufficient in terms of security, in terms of goods, but was able to thrive through effective alliances for security and to openness to trade. Early in the history of Malacca Sultanate, Parameswara established a strong relationship with China, which helped put in check the threats from Siam and Majapahit. Malacca continued to present all these 3 kingdoms with gifts and tributes, which in turn facilitated trade.